What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, for Tad the Side. And Tad, it begins. This is like, the past, handful of weeks. This is like that when you're on a roller coaster and you're taking that ascent and you're like now at the crest and you're about to take that big steep plunge and then take the rest of the ride. This is the beginning part. Like, we're at the crest of the hill. This is the descent now of beginning all of our fantasy analysis and, predictions and all of that. We're starting with our QB rankings episode today. And like I said, this is like going full throttle into the rest of our rankings and all of our analysis here. This is going to be a fun ride.
No, that's a very apt metaphor, because when you are in a league with Murr, Chauncey Talese, and Al Rowe, and it's about to start up again, taking the plunge is a very, very good way of describing that. The trash talk has already begun. You had to alert me.
I feel like it begun back in 3 months ago. It was like awful. The season was over. It was just like, yeah.
Like, it's legalized torture sending Chauncey a trophy from 5 states away. And God damn it, I'm going to get that trophy back just so the shit talking can stop. But no, we are back at our bread and butter. I am so excited. I'm trying to go a little less stat heavy up until the season starts, but I'm still very, very excited for the season. And as you can hear,
Cops are excited about it too.
Yeah, sirens are here, baby. They're going off. Let's do it.
Yeah, sound the alarm, because it has begun for us with our fantasy analysis and our fantasy coverage. Because we said this all the time last year, and we mean it, because we absolutely want you to win all of your respective fantasy leagues and your championships and all that, with the exception of a handful of leagues obviously out there. But just, we're here to support you. We're here to give you our best advice. So please, guys, you see their ticker down below. We're gonna plug it at the end too. But make sure you follow us on all of our Twitter handles, because that's the best way you can reach us when it comes to all of your fantasy questions, whether you need start-sit advice, whether you need waiver advice, whether you need trade advice, whether you need draft help, because that's going to be coming up pretty soon here. So, guys, all of that, please interact with us. We're here to help you out with all of that. And like I talked about, we're doing our rankings episodes, and that is the best place you can find all of our rankings, because we're not going to go 1 through 12 with all of our rankings in this episode. We're just going to give you a more overall view of the quarterback position and some of our thoughts behind it. But yeah, please check out our social media handles for our full rankings. Both mine and Tad will be up there for all the positions. So guys, please subscribe to all of our social media handles to get all of that information. And Tad, obviously, with fantasy football coming up, football is coming up as well. And outside of football, there's a ton of other sports that you can be betting on with our great sponsors at Underdog Fantasy. As of recording, Ted, the home run derby is going on, and Underdog Fantasy has you covered with that too. So you can make bets on, who's going to hit the fastest home run based on the StatCast miles per hour or whatever, who's going to hit the most home runs in a certain round. Just all of that is there. So they got you covered with that. They got you covered with the All-Star game as well, which is happening tomorrow. They got you covered with the Olympics, I'm pretty sure is going to be happening. So they got you covered with that. And of course, with only a couple months away to the NFL season starts, they'll have you covered with all of those bets as well. So, we'll give you lots of our picks once the season happens, just like last year with our, quick YouTube shorts. That will be coming next year, this coming season as well. So, make sure you tune in for that.
I forgot about those. I'm not going to lie.
It's going to be fun. You got to get into the practice of getting it quick again. But guys, please make sure you're participating with our good friends and sponsors, because they give us a promo code that we want to share with you here. The promo code is DESAI, DESAI. And you can bet with up to $500, and they will match that dollar for dollar. It's up to $500, $10 between that. And it's just really easy way to get to the a betting scene here. It's a fantasy scene as well. So, guys, just really get into the action. All you have to do is use that promo code. They will match whatever you put in on your first deposit only, your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500 to get that dollar for dollar match, and they will match that. So if you hypothetically put in that max about $500, they will match that all the way up to $500. So you will get to bet with up to $1,000 on their betting platform. So, get in the action. It's fun. It's easy to do. The website's easy to use. The apps are easy to use, both on Android and Apple devices. So, guys, get into the fun. lots of great action that you got with, the baseball here, and you got basketball happening, in a handful of months. You got NFL happening in a handful of months. The Olympics hopefully happening in a handful of months. So lots that you can be betting on. Do it with Underdog Fantasy. So that promo code again is DESAI, DESAI, to double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. So yeah, should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of fun. And I think the biggest thing, Tad, that I think is a lot of fun, we're getting into the crux of it. I already talked about it. You're taking that descent here. Fantasy football coverage. We're getting into it. This is going to be a ton of fun the next, handful of weeks before the season starts, all of our, analysis and everything. So start at the premier position, start at the quarterbacks here, start at the first thing here. So, I mean, we talked about this. We're not going to go 1 through 12 with all of our rankings. Make sure you tune into our social media handles for those full rankings that we have up there. But Tad, I do want to ask you, as we're putting our rankings together, what stood out to you when you saw my rankings? I shared them with you last night. It was just what stood out to you as far as I don't know if I would have had this guy up this high, or it's I'm surprised this guy didn't make it, because believe me, I texted you this before, last week. I was like, I think I have a hard time putting my rankings together.
12 is
I was
hard.
there's a lot of guys I want to put towards the end there that I was I don't know. This is a tough decision. So, yeah, there may be a guy that could find themselves in the top 12 as the season finishes. But as far as pre-draft rankings, it was very difficult for me to set these rankings. So when you saw my rankings, what were your initial thoughts? And just was there anything that stood out to you?
So, first off, I think we need to clarify, so in years past when we've done this, we've done our rankings 2 separate ways. I do it where I think they're going to finish. You did it in terms of where they're going to be drafted?
Yeah, so mine are still pre-draft rankings, so we kept that all the same. So yeah, mine are still pre-draft rankings. Tad's are, like he said, where he thinks they will finish. So it's that's just to give you a little bit different insight as far as with my view, where they're going to be drafted, but then with Tad's view, where they're going to finish. So that should give you a little bit of an idea as far as planning your strategy there.
Okay, so good for you, because that means I'm going to go less hard on you for this pick.
Okay. All right.
Slight spoiler alert for the graphics that you can find on social media. You got Lamar Jackson number 2.
I do.
You're doing the thing. Stop doing the thing. And everyone said I was crazy last year for saying, or was that last year, 2 years ago? I don't know, because I say this every year. Lamar Jackson, when it comes to fantasy, you got to be careful, because he's not going to play a whole season. You have to be careful. Now, again, if those were my type of rankings where you had him finishing second as the second best fantasy quarterback, then I would have gone way harder on you. Mm-hmm. Because again, if you're going to be practically guaranteed to miss at least 2 to 4 games, no way you're going to finish there. I could see him being the second quarterback taken, but again, I think people are finally catching on that those durability concerns are very real, and it's not going to derail your season unless something disastrous happens to Lamar Jackson. But at the same time, it does take a little bit of extra planning on the backup quarterback. So Lamar Jackson, number 2, even to be drafted, is a little high for me. I don't have him as my QB2. He does break into my top 12 for the first time in 2 years, though. He is slowly making a believer out of me, just not to play an entire season. But it was funny because, so you sent me your rankings last night and I was looking at them, and God, you sent them at 12:30 my time, a.m.
Yeah. And like I said, it was tough for me. So I was thinking about it for a long time, and I finally got to one. I even sent you one, and literally 10 minutes later, I sent you a revised one. I was like, no, I'm making a change here. So it's I don't know if you saw that. So
I did not. Yeah. I may be going off the old version. We'll see. But it was funny because I noticed one guy was off your list, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I decided to go to bed like a normal person at 1 a.m. Yeah, that's fair. And this morning I was kind of researching. I'm like, huh. And I looked at my list. I'm like, oh, he's not my list either. And I thought that was interesting. Kirk Cousins is off both of our lists in the top 12 finishers, which is really interesting considering he is walking in to a very, very good situation in Atlanta. So I'll give you first crack at it. Why did Kirk Cousins not break either of our top 12s?
This is one of those quarterbacks, like I talked about, that was I probably could have inserted him at the back half of my rankings, probably at 12 or 11 or something like that. But the more I thought about it, yes, I think he's landing in a perfect situation with a lot of skilled playmakers that he can sort of benefit from as far as his, fantasy status there. But I think the thing that worries me is that I was actually at a fantasy draft over the weekend. I participate in a charity league called
That is an
Scott Fish.
early fantasy draft. My
Well, I
God.
participate in a charity league called Scott Fishbowl. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a very popular
Oh,
charity
that
league
thing.
where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah. So that happened over the weekend. And so on the ride there, I actually met up with one of the guys who was at the live draft with me. And we're discussing this. And one of the things we talked about was mechanics, where we're discussing both Aaron Rodgers and we're discussing Kirk Cousins as well. And I was mentioning to him, I think I shared this on the podcast before about that viral video of Kirk Cousins playing with his sons, and one of his sons was standing on his Achilles. He's like, no, don't stand there. I'm still rehabbing, sort of thing. I thought it was hilarious. But the biggest thing that we were sort of discussing was that with Aaron Rodgers and the big injury they suffered last year, he doesn't rely so much. Like, I mean, yes, he does rely on it, but not as much as like a traditional quarterback to use that back foot to plant. He's a little bit more upper body to get his throws out there. So him coming back from injury doesn't worry me as much. Whereas with Kirk Cousins, he sort of fits that mold of a more traditional quarterback where he has to set that good plant foot and then get a solid throw off of that. So that's where it sort of worries me. It's just like, yes, I think he'll be healthy enough to play most of the season, but just you wonder whether it's still going to be like a little bit of a nagging concern about just whether he'll be able to get an effective throw off consistently throughout the entire 17-game season. So that was the biggest thing that I was sort of thinking about as I was putting these rankings together. I was like, I love the situation. I think he could really benefit from it, but just he was always like a very peaks and valleys type of guy, like wherever he's been. Even with Minnesota, there are times where he absolutely blows up, but then there are other times where it's like, he did very middling. So he wasn't a very consistent guy that you could rely on as far as being like a top 10, top 5 type of quarterback here. So with this injury now on top of it happening so later in the season too, because I mean, I remember I traded for him like midway through the season. That's when he got hurt. So it's like, it's still, possibly could be nagging as he begins the season. But I mean, all signs are pointing towards he'll be healthy to go by week 1. Should be no issues, but just that was the biggest thing that sort of worried me the most. Of just like, okay, maybe I think that's why he's going to miss out on my top 12. But if everything goes to plan and it works out the way that, Atlanta Falcons fans are hoping, and people who draft Kirk Cousins, that they're hoping that goes that way too, everything should be fine. And you can totally, forget everything that I'm saying here and forget all my concerns. But just, I think that's why he missed out on my top 12. It's just like, I'm still a little bit concerned because of his mechanics. I just like whether he could still be as dominant as he once was during his previous stops.
This is probably a terrible metaphor, but I'm going to go for it.
Why wouldn't you go for it?
I know. So I look at it, and it's funny you brought up Aaron Rodgers, because he was also another quarterback that, I was like, I really want to put you in my top 12, but I just can't. And is, largely because Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers both suffered the same injury.
Mm-hmm.
I compare those two when it comes to fantasy football, like going on a date with a really hot girl or a guy, if you're into that. And here's the issue though. They're really, really good looking, but they show up 30 minutes late. Okay, first red flag. Then they all of a sudden go, I don't know, I'm vegan. And for me, at least, that's a massive red flag. I cannot date a vegan. And then it's just all these red flags just pop up throughout the night. And you're just like, okay. And you're walking home at the end of the night and you're like, that was a lot of red flags, but they're really, really hot. It's just like, there's that one thing you just can't stay away from, because with both Rodgers and Cousins, for me personally, it has to do with age. Tom Brady is the only quarterback to defy age this way. Like, Aaron Rodgers is going to be 41. Kirk Cousins is 36. Like, at a certain point, the performance is going to drop off, and coming off just debilitating injuries, because keep in mind, you tear your ACL now with where, sports science is, sports medicine is. It's bad. It's still bad, but it's not the end of the world like it once was. Blowing out your Achilles is still really, really bad.
Yeah.
Like that is the new ACL, where like that happens. It's like, oh no. Like, I read a report yesterday while doing research that Cousins still may not be ready for week 1. We don't know.
Yeah, it is a little up in the air. Like, I mean, I've been reading reports that I think it's all systems go for week 1, but yeah, there could be a setback. Have no idea.
And so that's another thing. Now, going to Cousins specifically, the new team is worrying me a little bit. The new offense, it's a new offensive system. You got to get familiar. Like, you always see, and this is more like early season concerns. I think they'll have all this figured out, halfway through the season. But just that familiarity, kind of the timing with receivers and everything, especially because, like we said, if he's coming back slowly from his injury, which he should do, that's the smart play, also means he's not getting as much, practice time with his new teammates. And so that it's one of those things, like, if Cousins is your backup quarterback, that's a A tier, backup quarterback. But I think some people are going to draft him in terms of be like, oh, this could be kind of a sleeper starter pick. And I'm not so sure. Because even in the 8 games he played last year, he only finished in the top 10, week from week, like a top 10 weekly performance 3 times.
Yeah. See, so that's the thing that worries
me.
That
was with Justin Jefferson.
Exactly. And so it's like, yeah, we hope that, Kyle Pitts can emerge. We hope that Drake London can emerge. We saw the things that Bijan Robinson could do, but it's just like, will it all come together now under, like you said, a new system, new quarterback as well? It's like, there's still going to be a little bit of that meshing point at the beginning of the season where it's just like, they all need to come together and gel well. And exactly like you said, it's like, if there's that little bit of missing time where it's like, he's still rehabbing, he's not fully 100% to sort of get to that sort of stage where it's like, they're all on the same page, like that could be a hindrance as well. And so, yeah,
I feel like we're just also kind of assuming Zach Robinson is going to be just like Zach Taylor, but there's also the very real possibility that Robinson sucks. Because I remember like when Kellen Moore, another former Big 12, or I guess not Big 12 because he was Boise State, another former college football quarterback took over for the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone was freaking out, being like, oh my God, Kellen Moore is the next like Messiah. And he's not. You can ask Chargers fans. Kellen Moore as a coordinator really has not worked out incredibly well. So we're just kind of taking for granted that like, oh, Zach Taylor disciple must be just like Zach Taylor. We don't know that. We can assume it. I mean, you and I spent 40 minutes assuming that just a couple weeks ago, sure. Which by the way, you can still check out on the LAFB network YouTube channel. But yeah, it's just, they're, like I said, it's Kirk Cousins is a really hot girl, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say in my life. But at the same time, bunch of red flags.
I agree with that. So yeah, it's a little, I'm just a little shaky. And it's just like, yeah, if everything goes well, then that's an absolute sleeper pick for you because he's going to go outside the top 12 in your leagues, considering there, like I said, if people are valuing him as a backup quarterback, then if he emerges as a QB1 for you, then that's just fantastic value. That's all it is. But I think that's why he missed out on both of our respective top 12s for that reason, where it's just like, I think there's just still a little bit too many question marks surrounding Kirk Cousins to be like, no, he's going to absolutely dominate in this offense. If this was his second year of the offense, I'd maybe have a little bit more assurance, but this is his first year of that offense coming off the injury. That's a little shaky for me. So that's why I have it there. So let's flip things around here. Let's get to your rankings.
Let's not.
Tad.
No,
so,
it's okay.
So I had fun looking at your rankings, and reminder to those people who missed out the beginning part of the episode, I do my rankings based on pre-draft rankings. Tad does his rankings based on where they're actually going to finish at the end of the season. And so you may look at some of the names and be like, really? He's going to be here? And so the biggest one that I saw, your guy, Anthony Richardson, finishing as a top 12 fantasy quarterback, right at number 12, actually. So, I mean, that's the only, little bit of a preview based on our rankings here that we'll give you. Go check out the social media handles for the full graphics there, for our full rankings there. So, I mean, just what was your reasoning behind that? Like, I'm surprised that you got him finishing, in my opinion, so low.
So, yeah, you think I have him too low? You have him, okay.
I think he actually finishes a little bit higher than that. But, yeah, I'm curious as to why you have him at 12.
No, because I was actually surprised while doing, because I don't let it affect my opinion. I just kind of want to get a pulse on the climate, I guess is the way to put it. And I kind of was looking at other, quote unquote professionals, even though you and I are professionals as well. Their rankings, and I had the opposite reaction. A lot of people had him as a top 5 quarterback, finishing at 4 or 5. Most people had him in the top 10. And I will take you right back to my argument with Lamar Jackson. I'm not convinced he can last a full season. We have zero evidence other than Colts camp coming out for the last 3 or 4 months being like, no, he's stronger, he's bigger, he's better. And God, I hope that's true. But at the same time, you got to take it with a grain of salt because every year there's a guy that's like, oh no, he's fine. He'll come back better than ever. And it's like, yeah, but you're not expecting the Colts, website being like, oh, Anthony Richardson, can he stay healthy? Because that's not what the team's websites are built to do. No. And so I'm not judging the Colts and I'm not judging Anthony Richardson for, saying all of a sudden he's now Iron Man, apparently. But at the same time, I'll believe it when I see it. And for right now, the only evidence I have of him being able to, stay in an NFL game is he's played 1 full game in his career. Because people forget his debut. He missed the last quarter of that game. I'm trying to remember. Was it a head thing? No. Was it a head thing? I think it was a head thing.
I think it was the concussion, right?
Yeah, I think the concussion knocked him out. But that's my whole point of I hope you're bigger, faster, stronger. But at the same time, unless you start playing a little smarter, then I'm not convinced you can last the full season. Now, am I saying he's going to get knocked out after 3 or 4 games like what happened last season? No. I think he's good for 8 to 10 games. But at the same time, that's 7 weeks you're missing, and you have got to game plan for that. So I think it's nothing on him talent-wise. It's on his availability is my main concern.
That's fair. And I think that's a very logical concern, but I'd like to think that with him being out after only 4 games and the, misery that I think he suffered last year with the quarterback position.
No, it just wasn't him. It was all of us.
So I think just with that sort of thing, I think the coaching staff and the training staff, they probably took that under consideration. That's like, okay, we need you to sort of adjust your playing style. We need you for all 17 games, possibly into a playoff run potentially as well. So it's like, you need to adjust your playing style. But I think just the biggest thing as to why I have him finishing in the top 10 is because if he's healthy, his play style could definitely dictate him being a very consistent performer. And because of the running ability, that's the biggest thing that's going to benefit him.
I'm going to cut you off right there because that's exactly where I knew you were going. Because you just contradicted yourself. Because I agree with you. Like, okay, we got to change your play style. Well, what does that mean? Stop running it so much. Which means his fantasy value is going to drop a little bit. You'll see from both of our rankings, we hugely, very obviously valued rushing quarterbacks as we should over, more traditional quarterbacks that is now quickly becoming a bygone era. I would say the only non-mobile quarterback I had in no, that's not true. The only non-mobile quarterback traditionally that I had in my top 12 is Brock Purdy. But the reason I checked myself there is because I think this is kind of the evolution we're going to see in Anthony Richardson. Is Tua used to be a mobile quarterback, and it was very clear last season that the Dolphins, after his 3 concussions 2 years ago, Dolphins told him, stop running it. And so Tua once was a mobile quarterback, no longer is. I don't consider Tua a mobile quarterback. He's going to get you maybe 2-3 rushing touchdowns. So that's another reason I'm a little wary of Anthony Richardson, because if they change him to, more of a pocket presence, which is good, he looked very accurate last year, it also kind of hurts his fantasy. So either way, if he stays a runner, I'm not convinced he can stay on the field. If he stops being a runner, then his fantasy value still drops. So I think he's going to be good. I have a very hard time seeing him as a top 6 or 7 quarterback at the end of the season. I hope I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
I think the biggest thing is that they're going to keep him a running quarterback, but they're going to make him a smarter runner. So, he's going to take slides more. He's probably going to run out of bounds more. So it's like, that's the hope that I think a lot of people are going to have with Anthony Richardson when they draft him in their respective fantasy leagues. Because, you look at the play style, it's very reminiscent of Lamar Jackson, where it's like he gets a lot of the rushing yards, he gets a good amount of passing yards. And I think the reason that I think I like him a little bit better is because early in his career, Lamar Jackson didn't have the weapons that Anthony Richardson now has. You look at the Colts offense, they got Adonai Mitchell, absolute steal.
Cannot
that's
wait to see him play.
Michael Pittman, obviously, they signed to a big contract, so he's locked in. Alec Pierce, hopefully, he rebounds from his, he had a good rookie year last year, unless we speak about that, probably better. But then you have the emergence of Josh Downs on the other side. So
Downs, I love that man.
Set of receivers, and I know you got that cycle at tight ends. Hopefully, my guy Jelani Woods emerges there, but it's regardless, they have a good set of passing weapons that I think Anthony Richardson can develop as a passer as well. You throw in that rushing ability as well, I think he could be a very solid fantasy option. That's why I think he finishes higher than top 12, in my opinion.
And you left out the best player of the offense. Jonathan Taylor's still there.
Well, yeah, of course.
This is a full season of a healthy Jonathan Taylor, which we haven't had in a while because he's been was rightfully pissed off at the whole contract situation. I think, the Colts are a real sleeper to kind of be a very explosive offense here. It's just, again, I'll believe it when I see it. Until then, I'm not. We kicked off the episode with this. I get shit on enough for my bad fantasy takes. Not even bad fantasy takes, just my fantasy takes in general. Even if they're good ones, I still get shit on for it. And it's either okay, if I have to bet on Anthony Richardson to avoid that for the next year, I'm not feeling good about that bet. I'll believe it when I see it, and I hope to God I see it. Please, I cannot do another Colts missing the playoffs. I can't do it.
Yeah, that is true. So we'll see how this all pans out for Anthony Richardson. But I'm leaning more towards the optimism that I think it's all going to work out. He's going to play, if not the full schedule, at least maybe 14, 15 out of the 17 games for sure.
If he misses 1 or 2 games, I'm a believer.
Yeah.
But my concern is he's going to miss close half the season.
Interesting. All right. So I guess I'm a little bit more optimistic again on Anthony Richardson compared to you, surprisingly.
Yeah,
but hey, that's you as a Colts fan. And that Colts fan.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. So all right. So you're kind of leading maybe sort of in that sort of bust area for Anthony
A little bit.
Richardson. That's probably like there. But okay, let's actually talk about a bust at the actual position here at the quarterback position. So it's like you're sort of in that angle with Anthony Richardson, but who's a guy that you're just clear cut like, no, I am not trusting this guy this season.
I am so sorry, LAFB fans. I have to do it. And I think, again, going to casual, because I think if you like really follow football, this is not a very shocking pick, but I think more casual fans will kind of know that this guy's been good for the past couple of years. He's widely considered by many to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I don't even think I have to recheck my rankings real quick. Yeah, he didn't even crack my top 12. A top 5 quarterback in the NFL did not crack my top 12 fantasy quarterbacks, and that is Justin Herbert. I am avoiding that dude like cancer because, I mean, the reasons write themselves. They've lost, let's see, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler, on top of all that talent loss, which, by the way, I know is only, it's only 4 names. That's a lot. That's basically like all your starting playmakers.
That was their exact starting offense. Like, I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the only people they retained was the O-line and the quarterback. That's it. Yeah. So that's a concern in of itself. But then you look at the new coach who's brought in Los Angeles. And yes, I also mean Jim Harbaugh, but I mostly mean Greg Roman. This is what drove people nuts about Greg Roman with Lamar Jackson is like, why aren't you using our incredible dual threat quarterback more? Greg Roman's because he's stuck in the 90s where he just grounds and pounds it all day. So I think especially the signing of Gus Edwards, the way that Gus Edwards runs in a little bit more physical way, I think that's a big reason they let Eckler walk because Eckler is not a fit for Greg Roman offense. Gus Edwards is. He was, under Greg Roman in Baltimore. So I think that was very much on purpose. I think, Edwards is a fascinating fantasy prospect. Herbert's not. You got Ladd McConkey, who I think will be good, but I'm just, you never, of all the positions, not just fantasy football wise, but just on the field, rookie receivers are the hardest to predict. Sure. So while you and I both like McConkey, it's still a risk. Quentin Johnson, who again, it's kind of like Anthony Richardson. I'll believe it when I see it. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't trust him either. I trust him way less than Anthony Richardson. It's just that there's nothing impressive about that Chargers offense, and there are no indications to me that they can defy expectations this year. So in my book, Justin Herbert, undraftable.
Undraftable.
Wow. Okay. I'm not touching him.
One.
I'm not touching him. I would put Kirk Cousins over him, Aaron Rodgers over him. To me, I would say Herbert is on the same level as Deshaun Watson in terms of like, if you're super desperate, go for it. But otherwise, I ain't touching it.
That's a very interesting
take. Which is a saying that Deshaun Watson really could learn.
Because I 100% agree with you. I mean, we did a deep dive on Jim Harbaugh, and that was like, that's what his bread and butter is. He likes to bound the football, and they play strong defense. But the one thing I mentioned in that episode was that Jim Harbaugh in the NFL never had a quarterback at that same level as a Justin Herbert in his offense. Even if you probably go back to his college days either. Like, I mean, J.J. McCarthy was at that level. I can't remember any quarterbacks besides, I think, Cade McNamara, I remember, was a Michigan quarterback.
I'm a Michigan fan. I don't even remember. I think I stopped watching
Michigan. That's what it says something, right? That says something. We can't even remember one. I think Mason
Devin Gardner
Rudock, right? Jake Rudock, right? Was that a Harbaugh quarterback?
No, that was before Harbaugh.
That was way before. Okay, regardless.
Harbaugh might have gotten a year of Gardner.
Okay. But still, it's just like, it still speaks to the fact that it's just like, if he never had an elite level quarterback to lead his offense, you really just can't see like what he could do. Because I brought this up on the podcast in that episode too, where it's just like, he transformed Alex Smith into being more of that number 1 overall pick that we thought he could be. He obviously brought the best out of Colin Kaepernick as well. But now if you get a caliber of quarterback in Justin Herbert in his offense, what can he unleash from there? I could very much see this offense being a benefit for Justin Herbert and growing into the league a little bit better, because I remember we heralded Justin Herbert, I think, was it 2 years ago or it was last year, that everybody thought this guy was going to be a fantasy MVP. It didn't end up going that way. I think this could be that one thing where everybody's counting him out and he actually could end up being a fantasy MVP. But I still understand.
Fantasy MVP?
Could be. I don't
Wow.
think for sure it's going to happen.
Wow.
I'm just saying it could be one of those things where it's like everybody's doubting him, and now this is the time where he's actually going to turn it up. But I do agree with you
That take is so hot, it just made me reach an octave I didn't even know I had.
true. But just yeah, I do agree with you that I think the system with Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh that sort of negates, I think, just that potential fantasy MVP like rise. So it's like I do have a little bit of hesitation there. I mean, just spoiler alert, I don't have him in my top 12 either. And mine's the pre-draft ranking. So it's like I could see that, but just like it's still hard to not draft him. There's going to be some people in your league that are going to be like, you know what? I see so much of the potential there. New head coach, more quality head coach, and Jim Harbaugh. This is going to be a guy who's actually going to take off now. But just, yeah, the lack of weapons sort of worries me, and just that style worries me a little bit too. So I'm a little bit trepidatious as well as far as drafting him too.
What?
Trepidatious. Like,
Trepidatious?
yeah.
TREPACIOUS?
Yeah. It's like you have trepidations, but it's like,
well, yeah, I got the trepidation roots, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you understood
I
it.
just never heard of that phrasing. Trepidatious, huh? Learn something new every day. But no, I'll tell you exactly the player he's going to be. And I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen after this episode's released. A lot of people are going to be hating on me on YouTube and LAFB Slack. A lot of people are going to say I'm a dumbass. And then here's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be 1 week during the season where Herbert goes for 4 touchdowns and everyone messages me, oh, you're an idiot, blah, 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 blah. But then that very next week, you're going to start him and he's going to get you like 10 points. That's the type of quarterback he's going to be. It's very up and down. I'm not saying he's like, but that kind of consistency, stay away. That's for the flex option. That's not for my quarterback option. I need my quarterback to give me at least 15. Otherwise, I'm fucked. So, like, that's why he's undraftable, in my opinion, because a erratic quarterback performance, I'd rather go for a guy who will give me 15 compared to the guy who will give me 30, and then the guy that will give me 10.
Yeah.
That's the type of performance that drives me nuts.
Yeah,
exactly.
I get that. For me, I'm going to go with the name that just got a big contract in the offseason here, but I just don't trust him fantasy-wise because just even with his bad track record here the last 2 years with the new head coach, just hasn't been looking the way that I want it to look. And that's Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Calvin Ridley leaving the division, I think that's going to hurt this offense a lot more than I think the Jaguars,
leaving the team, not the division.
You're right.
I wish Calvin really left the division. Trust me, I wish he left the division.
That's my mistake. So going to a division rival, that's going to hurt this offense, I think, a little bit more there. And I do, Christian Kirk unfortunately got hurt, I think, towards the that season there. So it's like I think he's going to be more reliable in this offense, just like he was last year before he got hurt. They did draft Brian Thomas Jr. as a speed threat. They also signed Gabe Davis from the Buffalo Bills, but Tad, we all know about Gabe Davis. I mean, the guy that we thought was always going to break out never really happens. And so it's like, is it finally going to happen in Jacksonville? I have no idea. I'm leaning more towards no. But you look at, obviously, the wash of a season during his rookie year under Urban Meyer. I mean, the less we talk about that season, probably the better. But
we need to keep acknowledging that Urban Meyer cheated on his wife in a Jacksonville bar. And then, was it the same week or at least the same season? Literally kicked his kicker.
Yeah. No, it is surprising. I mean,
I need a
absolute train wreck of a hire, unfortunately, just how it all ended up going down there. But then they bring in Doug Peterson, now Super Bowl winning head coach, and you think he's going to turn things around here. But just Lawrence, like, we saw some improvements, but it hasn't been those drastic improvements that you want, especially him being a former #1 overall pick and just the high level of just, potential that a lot of people expected from him when he is drafted. Because I mean, if you look at the last 2 seasons under Doug Peterson alone, I don't even count the Urban Meyer year, but under the last 2 seasons, Lawrence has averaged in the 2 seasons there 4,064 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions to go along with 350 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. So I mean, those are very pedestrian numbers. Like, I mean, if you look at fantasy aspect, like he finished outside the top 12 in both of those seasons because they're just not great numbers. Now, I mean, the 1 year that he finished 7th overall in fantasy leagues and PPR leagues in 2022, he had less interceptions and he threw for a little more yards. But just like you see a little bit of just like the consistency is not there. And then now you're losing a crucial piece of your offense there in Calvin Ridley. You added Brian Thomas, like you just talked about, Ladd McConkey, who I have a little bit more faith in compared to Brian Thomas Jr. to come into this offense to sort of be that threat. It's like, that's going to be interesting to see whether he can adjust. And like I talked about with Gabe Davis, I just don't know whether the new team is going to benefit him or whether it's just going to be more of the same of what we saw in Buffalo. So that is the big thing there. So it's just like when you don't have as many options there, it's like you can rely on Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. But outside of that, if you lock them both up, now what are you going to do? So that's the thing that sort of worries me about the Jaguars offense. Yes, they have Travis Etienne coming out of the backfield, but just it's still not stable enough of options there in that offense to make me think that, okay, now going into a third year under Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence can really ascend and become a more reliable option as far as a fantasy quarterback is concerned. So got a big contract. Maybe that's going to, light a fire under him, and he's going to be, more productive with that sort of stability there. But just, I'm leaning more towards that. I got a lot more question marks on his offense and just whether he could take that next step that worries me a little bit more. So I'm not trusting Trevor Lawrence this year.
So out of the 3 other teams in the AFC South, the Jaguars are by far my most hated. So the last
Okay.
8 minutes was nothing but music to my ears.
Okay, fair.
So well, I guess ear, but thank you for that. Well, you didn't have to shake your head so vigorously at the ear joke, but that is a joke that only like 5 people listening are going to
probably
understand. But I mean, no, I think it's kind of going back to what I said about with Herbert with the consistency. I know you brought up that word as well. I don't think he'll be quite as erratic of because Lawrence doesn't really have that many really bad games.
True.
But and I remember having this discussion, shout out to Max, with friend of the show, Matt, who hates Trevor Lawrence, despises him.
Oh, okay.
It's the weirdest thing I've seen. And it has nothing to do with he played, because he's hated him since the Clemson days. He just thinks he's kind of a douche, which, you know what? Yeah, more power to you, buddy. But, we were talking about this a couple months ago when the discussions around his contract extension were coming up. And both of us were like, he's going to get overpaid. Because, I mean, this is just the book on Lawrence. He's good, not great.
Yeah.
That's fine. He's not a bad quarterback. He's just not great. I don't think he ever will be. Which I think the only reason people kind of get on him so much is because he was the second coming of Andrew Luck coming out of the draft and clearly has not lived up to that.
Nope.
But yeah, he's fine. He's fine. If you ask me to do my top 20 quarterbacks, might end up at 18, 19, 20. Something around that. He's fine. He's also, I'm close. I'm not doing it, but I'm close to throwing him in the same tier as Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert, where he's just not going to do enough for you to be worth drafting. An interesting waiver target to keep an eye on, depending on the matchup. That could be interesting if he plays, I don't know, who has a crappy secondary. I almost said New Orleans, but New Orleans defense always outperformed. Yeah.
They have a good defense.
Who has a bad secondary? Like the Giants. If it was Jaguars versus the Giants, I would be like, oh, yeah, okay. And Anthony Richardson's on a bye week. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence isn't bad. Plug and play there. But that's all he is a plug and play. So I don't know if I call him a bust because of that, because that's where my expectations are. But if people are drafting him expecting a breakout for the 4th year in a row, you just haven't learned your lesson by now, because a breakout's not happening. He's fine. He's, to relate him to another Jaguars quarterback, he's Mark Brunell. Mark Brunell's in there in his prime. I'm not feeling great, but I'm not feeling bad either. It's just okay, let's see how this goes.
But yeah, I think just that definition there, where you're calling a player fine but not great, then that's not a guy that I want on my fantasy roster. So it's I'm trusting Justin Herbert a little bit more than Trevor Lawrence, and obviously more than Deshaun Watson. So, but just overall, just I would not draft Trevor Lawrence in my league this year at all. That's just not something that would happen. I don't think anybody else will. Depending on the number of people in your league, if you're in a 10-12 league, I really doubt he gets drafted. But yeah, so I just don't anticipate that breakout to happen. A lot of people may look at that contract and be like, all right, they're committed. They got him some new weapons. Hopefully he's going to emerge now. But I see the opposite. I think it's just going to stay the same. It's going to be all right, but nothing fantastic for sure. So,
and I think that's a crucial mistake a lot of people make. I'm so glad you used that phrasing of, they got new weapons. They didn't get him better weapons.
Yeah.
New isn't always better, despite what Barney Stinson would tell you. That was a downgrade. Going from Calvin Ridley to Gabe Davis, that was a massive downgrade. It's new, but it's not better. And that is a key thing. I think that's kind of where we landed with Kirk Cousins too. Yes, he's in a new situation that is better, but doesn't mean it's ideal.
Agreed. All right, Ted, let's sort of get to the other side of the coin here. So let's talk about sleepers now. So it's these are guys that potentially could be on our top 12 rankings. These are guys that could be outside of our top 12 rankings that could sort of find their way to finish in the top 12. So I mean, just who's a guy that you're maybe sneakily going to be targeting towards maybe the end of drafts, or maybe, not the end of drafts, but like the middle of drafts. If you miss out on some of those like top tier guys like a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, like you miss out on some of those guys. Who's a guy that you may be targeting in that second tier, fill out the rest of your roster with a quarterback sleeper.
This is why I hate doing a fantasy football podcast sometimes,
Yeah.
because I'm about to reveal a draft secret, and my friends listen to this show, LAFB coworkers listen to the show, so
Sure.
this could screw me in about a month. But this quarterback is actually my break in case of emergency quarterback, where like if
Okay.
somehow all my options are gone and I'm like, oh my God, I'm screwed, I think he'll still be there in the last couple of rounds. And I actually really, really like his potential. And that's Jayden Daniels, the
Jayden
LSU
Daniels.
rookie,
Okay.
now a
Okay.
Washington Commander. And look, I'm going to kind of contradict what I said most of this episode, where instead of his mobility scaring me, I think in terms of like being a sleeper, in terms of hidden value, that's where his mobility is actually a strength.
Okay.
And it kind of surprised me too while I was trying to find a sleeper. Washington's offense is better than I thought. They have a very, very solid offense at worst. You could even argue good offense. They have Jahan Dotson, who really broke. I did not like him at all coming out of the draft. Man, he has proved me wrong. That is a legitimate deep threat weapon right there. They got Terry McLaurin, who is, in my opinion, if not the most underrated receiver in the NFL, one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL.
Easily.
Austin Eckler, I thought was an A+ signing. He's going to really help Jayden Daniels in the passing game. Let's not forget, Brian Robinson's still there too. So he has a very solid run game to back him up as well. So I think passing wise, Jayden Daniels will be fine. Probably finish anywhere from 25 to 30 touchdowns. Wouldn't shock me if he finished over. But I think realistically, 25 to 30 passing touchdowns. I think if he can play a full season, he's going to get over 10 touchdowns, no problem. Now, that's the real risk here that comes with sleeper, though, is a draft criticism that both you and I had was watching his game film in college at LSU. We should watch some of his Arizona State stuff, too. I never did.
I watched a little bit of it,
Did
but
you?
I think he made such drastic improvements to his LSU game that just
That's
like
why I never even bothered touching the
you
Arizona
didn't have
State
to watch a
stuff,
ton of the Arizona State tape. Yeah.
But bottom line being is the main criticism we had on him, and this is something that you and I both shared before even shared our thoughts with before like sharing them actually physically with each other, was, dude, be a smarter runner.
Yeah.
Because like instead of like going towards the sidelines, you just go like straight down the middle of the field and be like, don't do that because you're gonna get murdered at the next level.
He wouldn't slide either, so that
he
was
would not slide. No, exactly. It was the worst. Like it physically hurt me watching him do that. So if he can fix that mistake, and I have to imagine that is going to be a top priority of the Commanders for at least the last couple of months of like, here's how you run correctly. I just think the mix of very good offense around him, Cliff Kingsbury's system that has worked in the NFL. It's just, what was the big reason that Kyler Murray never succeeded there? Well, he was short and he wasn't very durable. Jayden Daniels at least is bulkier and much taller. I think if you stack two Kyler Murrays on top of each other, you get Jayden Daniels. So that's an exaggeration before anyone yells at me. I like Jayden Daniels' potential. I would not roll with him as a QB1, but he is a very interesting bench option.
Yeah, you're also leaving out one playmaker that they signed as well. They signed Zach Ertz, who has familiarity with
Zach Ertz is a Commander?
He is signed with from the Arizona Cardinals with the Washington Commanders, and Cliff Kingsbury, who's the offensive coordinator, has familiarity with that too. So it's like you got to like that game plan option there, where it's like, you got a familiar player in that offense there. They also have another tight end that we're both fans of, Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, right? So it's like that's another good option as well. But just I do agree. I think he's just in a better situation with a good set of options. And I think we discussed this in our Commanders episode where we are talking about Dan Quinn and that offense. I'd like to think Cliff Kingsbury learned from his mistakes in Arizona with how he was coaching Kyler Murray. And he's going to learn from that and apply that now to Jayden Daniels, where he's going to make him more of a smarter passer. He's going to run when he only needs to and sort of be just, play very much like the prime Deshaun Watson at Houston, whereas like he was making more plays in his pocket, and then when he had to, he was getting out there and he's making plays with his legs and getting good yards on the run, getting good yards through the run there too. So I could see that happening with Jayden Daniels here too. But just you wonder with just the whole rookie aspect whether he's just going to be able to adjust enough. So I do agree. I'm probably not going to be drafting him as a QB1, but he could be one of those guys that's like if he goes undrafted, towards the middle of the season, as he starts to emerge and he gets more used to the NFL type of style, he could become a very valuable late season option to push you towards the playoffs if you need that option in case you lose a quarterback early, like, so many people did last year with that Anthony Richardson or Aaron Rodgers from last year. So I do like Jayden Daniels as a potential sleeper with that rushing and passing ability. Very good option for sure.
Do you think he gets drafted in most leagues, or do you think he goes undrafted?
I think it's going to be very 50-50. I think there's going to be some leagues that see the rushing ability and they'll be like, you know what? I think I want that with my quarterback. And they're going to take him as a part of as the last team to take a quarterback. They may take him and bank on like that high risk, high reward sort of style there. But then there may be a lot of leagues that just be like, you know what? I want to see how he plays out, kind of like I laid out there, where it's like, I want to see how he plays, adjust the NFL, how the system will work for him. And then as a midseason option, maybe pick him up and maybe I can make some trades or something like that with the guy that I have and then pick him up later sort of thing too. So I think it's very much a 50-50 split as far as like some leagues they draft him, but I think there's a good portion that will also skip him as well.
Here's my prediction.
Okay.
I bet you that this is what's going to happen because I actually agree with you. I think it's going to be split. There's always seems to be that one guy in one of your leagues that like loves drafting rookies for some reason. And you're just like, okay. So I think he'll get drafted in, like 30-40% of leagues. But I'm telling you this right now, like week 3, 4, 5, somewhere like kind of early on in the season, but kind of getting toward like middle of the season, he's going to make a play. It's going to be like a 70-yard run or something like that. It's going to be all over SportsCenter, and that dude is going to be the hottest waiver wire pickup of all time.
Easily.
So if he, of all time is an exaggeration, of the season.
Not of all time.
Of the season is what I meant to say. So yeah, I mean, if you watch, and this is why most people should have Red Zone, by the way, if you were watching, the Commanders for whatever reason early on the season, you start, and maybe his stats aren't showing it, but you kind of like the way the play style is, and you're like, okay, I'm convinced he can be around for most of the season. I say pull the trigger early. Like, don't wait for the breakout game, because when that breakout game happens, a lot of people are going to be desperate.
I agree with that. So, all right, let's get to my sleeper here. So, I mean, we were kind of ripping on one LA football team's quarterback as far as being a potential bust here, but I got a sleeper here with the other LA team, and I got Matthew Stafford as a quarterback sleeper this year. Because, I mean, through the first 9 weeks of the season, Stafford was the 21st ranked quarterback in PPR leagues. The Rams were also 3-6 during that span. If you look at the second half of the season, so the final 8 games of the season, Stafford was the 9th ranked quarterback in PPR leagues. Rams also went 7-1 in that span, and they also ended up making the playoffs as well because of that streak. So heading into 2024, the Rams, I think, have an emerging offense with a healthy Cooper Kupp. Obviously, a second-year Puka Nacua who had a fantastic rookie season. You got Kyron Williams in the backfield, who hopefully will be able to stay healthy and be a dominant running back. But in case he gets hurt, they drafted Blake Corum, who I think could step in and be an absolute beast as well in case he's needed there. So, I mean, they got a lot of potential on this young offense. And then you also have to throw in Demarcus Robinson every so often for a deep threat. So it's like all these pieces with the very good offensive-minded guru is Sean McVay. I think this is a very good offense that you want to draft a lot of fantasy players from. And with that, you got the grizzled veteran and Matthew Stafford to sort of lead them all in. So I think he's got a very good shot to be one of those guys that maybe will not be in a top 12 for a lot of people. And he could possibly find his way into the top 12 or top 10 potentially, depending on whether he could stay healthy and whether his playmakers around him can stay healthy. So I think that's a very good shot this year. You also look at the fact that in the Rams' Super Bowl year run in 2021, Stafford finished as the 6th ranked quarterback in PPR leagues. He threw for 4,886 yards, 41 touchdowns, and that was only with Cooper Kupp as his dominant receiver, having close to 2,000 receiving yards, winning the receiving triple crown, winning MVP, all of that. Now you add him plus Puka Nacua. Like, I mean, automatically, now you're giving this guy 2 solid weapons in that offense. So it's like, I think we should see shades of that 2021 Matthew Stafford in 2024 here, but now with a lot more weapons around him. So I think just his value is going to be kind of undervalued because of the season that he had last year. Like I said, you see that first half of the season that totally derailed his like overall finish, but that back half of the season, I think is the real Matthew Stafford that I think we can see here heading at 2024. So 100% a guy that a lot of people may not eye as like, okay, this is a guy that I want as my QB1, but if you do draft him late, I think he could be a very good benefit for you.
So the reason I was, for our YouTube audio or for our listening audience, I was making faces when you announced that.
Sure.
It's not because I don't disagree with anything you said. In fact, I agree with pretty much everything, except for your initial statement that he's a sleeper. Is anyone really sleeping on Matt Stafford anymore?
I think very much like there's so many other quarterbacks, like you said, a lot more value on the rushing quarterback, and that's what Matthew Stafford is not. He is a
That's fair.
sit in the
That's a fair
pocket
counter.
quarterback. That's where he does his damage, right? So it's like automatically he's going to be undervalued because of that, because so many people are going to be prioritizing those types of quarterbacks. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody drafts Jayden Daniels ahead of Matthew Stafford.
Oh,
Matthew
that
Stafford
would be
goes undrafted.
madness. No,
I
that
can
would
very
be
much see that
that
happening.
would be
I can
this
see that
is
happening in some
Sparta
leagues.
level crazies of madness of like this is madness. This is Sparta. Like, no, that would be absolutely insane. I will kick you down a hole if you do that.
I 100% could see that happening in a lot of leagues where they just be like, all right, here's the young, fresh up and comer. He's got the rushing ability, so I'm going to take him ahead of Matthew Stafford. Where it's like, I think Matthew Stafford in a stable offense with a proven offensive play caller is Sean McVay. I think that's a guy that I trust a little bit more here. So it's like, yeah, that's a guy that very much like I talked about with Jayden Daniels and just some of the other guys, where it's like, if you miss out on those top heavy guys, I'd fill out the rest of my roster and I'd be targeting Matthew Stafford a little bit later in the draft. It's like, okay, this is a guy that I could trust as my QB1.
See, for me, like I think the reason you and I agreed on 12 for ranking quarterbacks was it's kind of like, on Reddit or on, Twitter or whatever, when you see like the tier rankings, when people do
Yeah.
that with like TV shows and stuff, it's like tier 1 is 1 through 12. Tier 2 is probably 12 through 20. Stafford falls very solidly in that tier 2 for me. And I just don't know. That's a little high but that's me personally. So if he's not in tier 2 for anyone else, yeah, he's too low. That's a great sleeper. It's just, I wonder how many people are really, because I think Stafford would be one of the first tier 2 quarterbacks taken because he should be. But if he's not, then 100%, that's a great sleeper pick.
But yeah, some of the quarterbacks that we already talked about this episode, like I could see, Jayden Daniels being drafted ahead of Matthew Stafford.
Insanity.
I could see Justin Herbert being drafted ahead
That
of
would
Matthew
be
Stafford.
so dumb.
I could see, who else do we talk about?
Kirk Cousins?
Kirk Cousins. I could see him being drafted. Yeah, because of the situation.
What is wrong with people?
Just like you said, because of the situation that he's going into, everybody's going to be like, you know what? You look offense, Kirk Cousins, I think, is a little bit more valuable than Matthew Stafford. But I think that is where it's going to hurt a lot of people. That's just like, I could have had Matthew Stafford. I took some of these other guys ahead of him. So that's where I think somebody could benefit if they're smart enough that they could take Matthew Stafford later and come out with a QB1.
Idiots.
Whatever it is, but that's the analysis that you get from us. And that's why it helps to tune into our podcast and our YouTube episodes here. But let's close this out with our best section here, the quarterback bold prediction here, Tad. So what's a bold prediction that you got for me real quick?
Not 1, not 2, not 3. Yeah, no, I'm capping it at 3. Yeah, how high did LeBron go up with that? Did he say like 6?
I think got to 7. I thought he got to 7 if I remember correctly.
Idiot. So anyway,
that's your team at that time.
I believed it too. Fucking Spurs. Anyway, I'm gonna cap. I'm gonna be smarter than LeBron. And if memory serves, did he win 2 in Miami or 3?
He won 2 in Miami. He won back to back because he lost the first one and then they won 2 after that.
All right. So we're gonna go 1 higher than the amount of titles he won in Miami. Then I'm gonna cap it at 3. But I think there's a real possibility that 3 rookie quarterbacks finish in the top 15.
In the top 15. Now that's
top 15.
Pretty bold.
So we already discussed Jayden Daniels. So I think he has some real potential there. Caleb Williams really wouldn't shock me if he finished like top 10. Because we discussed this, during the draft process, especially after the Keenan Allen trade. This is arguably the best situation number 1 pick has ever walked into with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. I almost said Pollard, but is Pollard? I'm seeing once the offseason's done, all the information goes out.
DeAndre Swift.
Thank you. Pollard's in Tennessee. That's right. So DeAndre Swift, like this is a Cole Kmet, obviously a established presence in Chicago at this point. That's a great situation for a number 1 overall pick to come into. He's crazy accurate. He's also kind of like what we're talking. I think that is what Jayden Daniels should model his game after, because Caleb Williams, he's not rushing threat, but I also think he's good for at least 5 rushing touchdowns this upcoming season, just enough to kind of push up the numbers a little bit. Now, the third one is a little trickier. The third, I was about to walk off of this take and do another one, but then I really thought about it. Look, I am not a JJ McCarthy lover. I think he's grossly overrated. I was about to say I think he got overdrafted, but the Vikings did good. They stayed patient. I think that was actually fair value for him. That offense is just too good for him not to be good. Like between Jordan Addison, assuming he can stay sober, is it too soon for that?
No, not
He
soon.
didn't kill anyone. That's fine. So Jordan Addison, assuming you can say sober, TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson. They could make, Mac Jones. You put Mac Jones in that offense, I think he looks pretty good. So I think that JJ McCarthy might be able to eke in there. That wouldn't really shock me either. So I am going with it. 3 rookie quarterbacks in the top 15.
That's pretty bold. I could definitely possibly see 2, but yeah, 3, that's a little steep for me. That third one is the real question mark for sure. Whether
Also,
it's
I
Jaden
don't know if
McCarthy
you're
or
watching the Giants
Bo
Hard Knocks thing.
Nix or just, yeah.
Well, no, Bo Nix is never in the conversation in my head. But Drake May looked really
May,
good.
that's another one.
The Giants were interviewing him during the Hard Knocks thing, and like Jayden Daniels kind of like stumbled over it a little bit. Like I think it's a little overblown, but like Drake May, they were like, all right, now make this player, and like they threw a bunch of stuff at him. He got like everything. He didn't trip up once. So I was like, oh my god, this guy's good. So like, look out for the Patriots.
Could be interesting. So my hot take, this is a little bit more surprising here. I'm going to say Josh Allen will finish outside the top 5 for fantasy quarterbacks here. So similar to Trevor,
Bills Mafia, his name's Amir, mine is Tad. Leave me
this
alone.
is the first time, yeah, you can direct all your comments to me as opposed to Tad here. But similar to Trevor Lawrence, I think
he's going to throw a flaming table through your window.
Yeah, seriously, it's going to happen. Similar to Trevor Lawrence, the fact that Stephon Diggs is no longer playing for the Bills is really going to affect this team because, Tad, if you look at 2019, Allen finished with 288.6 fantasy points. This is his second year in the league in PPR leagues. John Brown was the leading receiver on that team with 72 receptions and 1,060 yards. So he did crush the 1,000 receiving yard mark. But here, the very next year, 2020, they acquire Stephon Diggs. The Bills acquires Diggs, and Allen's points skyrockets up to 396.1 fantasy points. Diggs led the team with 127 receptions and 1,535 receiving yards. That's just production that is hard to replace because very similar to what we talked about with the Jaguars. It's like you're replacing Diggs now with Keon Coleman, who I have high praise for. I think he could be a very good number 1 receiver. Will that happen in his rookie year? That I'm a little bit more skeptical about. Dalton Kincaid, fantastic tight end. I love him. I think he's going to be a go-to weapon for Josh Allen. But outside of him, we talked about Curtis Samuel being part of the team. We talked about Khalil Shakir being part of the team. We talked about Dawson Knox being part of the team. It's like they're all very good options. Even that, it's like some of them are just good options, not even very good options. So
I don't even go good with some of that.
So it's like, I just worry about the fact that too much of it is going to rely on Josh Allen and some of the things that we talked about with like Jayden Daniels and Anthony Richardson and Lamar Jackson, where it's just like, if too much of the offense is relied on Josh Allen and he has to do too much and he gets hurt, that's the thing that worries me a lot. That just like he's going to have to do too much of this offense. It's end up going to be costing this team a lot more because you also look at the fact that he rushed for 15 rushing touchdowns last season. I don't think that's a repeatable number. He doesn't get to double-digit rushing touchdowns this coming season. You also look for the fact that he threw for under 30 passing touchdowns the first time in his career outside of his rookie year, and he also had set a career high with 18 interceptions this past year as well. So if he keeps those interceptions numbers high and those passing touchdowns low, there's no way they finishes it with the top 5. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that Josh Allen is a guy that you don't want to be drafting. He is still a very viable fantasy option, but I think just the biggest thing that we talk about is return on investment, your ROI with lots of these draft picks. I think if you're taking Josh Allen, a lot of people are expecting Josh Allen to be the first quarterback off the board in a lot of leagues. That return on investment, you expect him to finish within the top 5 then easily if you're going to take him as your first quarterback off the board there. I don't think that happens. And so it's like, even though potentially Josh Allen may even be a first-round pick, depending on the leagues that you play in. So it's like, even as a first-round pick to not finish in the top 5, that's what worries me here. So I think just too many changes to the offense, the lack of weapons here, the really, like I said, the numbers that he had last year not being duplicated with 15 rushing touchdowns and the more interceptions, that's what worries me a lot about Josh Allen. So I think he'll finish just outside the top 5. Still worthy of being a fantasy quarterback for you, but just, yeah, keep your expectations low if you're going to take him as your first quarterback off the board.
I love this take because again,
okay,
I was looking at other, quote unquote professionals, quote unquote experts, and almost consensus. There we go.
Yes.
I guess also consensually, unless there's something really weird going on at CBS I don't know about.
You did a lot better digging than I did if it's consensual.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Allen was widely considered to be the number 1 quarterback in a lot of these rankings. And the entire time I'm like, why? Because I agree with you. I think what they're doing is they're looking back at last year. Oh, 15 rushing touchdowns on top of all these passing. That's brilliant. Yes, it was a very brilliant season. I don't think he can repeat that. And I laugh because it reminds me of, I think it was Trevon Diggs that tweeted this out and Stephon liked it, where Trevon Diggs was like, he wasn't good before my brother got there. And it's true. It's very true.
Very true.
Like that talk of like, oh, Josh Allen may be a bust was starting to go on the rise before Stephon Diggs arrived at Buffalo. Now, am I saying he's going to return to that form, Josh Allen? No. I think there's reasonable, assumption that, Josh Allen has learned and matured as a quarterback, but that also doesn't prevent you from a drop in production. And I think I pretty much agree with everything you said. Now, I will say this. He did finish inside my top 5, but not by much. Not by much. It was by a threat. It was very, very tough. And I think just because they're going to lean on him so heavily that the stats are just going to be there naturally. But yes, I completely agree with you. I think if people look at like I said, CBS or SI also had this, although with SI, apparently now everything is AI there. A lot of more casual football people are going to draft him as the first quarterback. And I think that is a huge mistake.
100%. Because I mean, we saw this in the very opening game of the season last year against the against the Jets, where he was making throws where it's just like, why are you making that throw? There's a reason he got to 18 interceptions, and that was with Stephon Diggs. That's just
interceptions. He fumbles the ball a lot.
That is the true case too. So it's just like, that's what worries me more. That's just like, without a proven playmaker at the receiver position, I just think he's for sure going to see a regression. And I think that will keep him out of the top 5. So like you said, still dependable. He's still going to be the focal point of that offense. He's going to put up a lot of numbers to warrant being a QB1. But yeah, to be the first quarterback off the board and to not be in the top 5, that's the thing that worries me. So yeah, I'm avoiding him as the first quarterback off the board if I'm in that position. But there's a lot of people that are going to be like, nope, he's the clear guy. He's still going to be the guy that's going to do it for sure, but I just don't see it.
Would you take him or Tua?
I still take Josh Allen.
I think I would too. But I feel like those are like on the same. No one's drafting Tua to be number 1, but my guess is those two are going to finish very close to each other points-wise.
It could happen. It very well could happen. All right, guys, so that will close out our quarterback fantasy-centric episode. Like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, follow us on our social media handles. You got me at Twitter, up at the side 23. You got Ted's 94. We got the show handle at the Side Guys, and of course on Instagram at the Side Guys as well. The stuff doesn't stop here. The analysis, the coverage, everything. So hit us up on our social media handles if you want specific coverage with your specific leads, with starts and advice, with fantasy draft help, with trade help, with keeper help if you're in a keeper league. I mean, dynasty leagues. I mean, anything and everything. Please hit us up. We're here to help you win your respective championships and your respective leagues there. That is where you'll see all of our quarterback rankings as well. We did discuss any of our rankings at all during the episode. We had a quick previews here and there, but we'll get the full rankings to you in graphic form on those social media handles. So please check that out. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please, guys, make sure you're supporting our parent network at LAFB Network. They're giving you a lot of great content, especially with the football season right around the corner. They're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers at the professional level. And in college football season, they got the Bruins and the Trojans. That's coming up pretty soon as well. So they got a lot of great content coming through from all of those handles. But guys, I mean, just please, if you're listening to the podcast, if you're already subscribed and you're following us on our social media handles, if you're watching the videos, if you're sending us questions, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast, we can't thank you enough.
And hey, if you think I'm a dumbass, if you think Amur's a genius, let us know. We are going to up the interaction.
Or vice versa. Vice versa too.
Yeah, vice versa would be nice for once. But we really want to interact with you guys more this upcoming season. And like Mer said, it starts right now. So YouTube comments, hit us up there. The LAFB Reddit, we've been pushing that on the show for the last couple of weeks. You can hit us up there. You can also hit us up on the socials that Mer's already shouted out. He's better at that, hence why I'm not doing it. But yes, Instagram is a great way to get in contact with us because we both have access to that account. So we want to interact with you guys. We want to help you guys. We want to hear your thoughts. Even if they're negative, I always get a good laugh out of that. So I love one person said one time, I couldn't get past a minute of these guys. I'm like, the minute is just us bantering. Like there was no analysis. I was like, we didn't even get through the underdog read. I was like, okay, wow. But again, I got to laugh at it. I thought it was funny. So I can't wait to interact with you guys as the season gets closer. Let us know if there's any fancy episodes or fancy segments that you want us to focus on because we got about 2 months to fill until the season kicks off. So looking forward to it, guys. As always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay safe, everyone.